The laws of Shabbos. Okay. So there are 4 dimensions to the observance of Shabbos. 2 originating in the Torah and 2 originating in the words of the sages, which are given exposition by the prophets. So, in other words, it's kind of hinted to in the Torah, but it's not a biblical command. The 2 dimensions originating in the Torah, the commandments, Zachar is Yom Shabbos, remember the day of Shabbos. Shomer is a Shabbos, and remember, or observe the Shabbos. By the way, that's in the 10 Commandments, right? In the first time in 10 Commandments, it says Zachar, to remember. In the second, in Deuteronomy, where it's repeated, the 10 Commandments by Moshe himself, he repeats it, right? And there he doesn't say remember, he says observe. Okay, so those are 2 commandments. The 2 dimensions given exposition by the prophets are honor and pleasure, kavod and oinig. Kavod Shabbos and oinig Shabbos. The kavod Shabbos, oinig Shabbos, pleasure. So honor and pleasure. So it says in Isaiah, and you shall call the Shabbos a delight, sanctified unto God and honored, right? Karaso the Shabbos oinig, the kaid Kedesh Hashem mechubad. Okay, so what is meant by honor? So, by the way, we've done already how to remember Shabbos. Who remembers how to remember Shabbos? Anybody? How do you remember Shabbos? Zachar Yom Shabbos Katre. How do you do that? Make Kiddush. Is remembering. In the Kiddush, you're remembering Shabbos too, right? And verbalizing it by making Kiddush or hearing Kiddush, right? You're doing that. Shamor, how are you doing Shamor? How are you observing Shabbos?
For sure. I don't know.
No.
How do you observe it? By law.
Biblically. Observing Shabbos is a biblical commandment. All the prohibitions, the 39 different categories of malacha, of work, right?
Yeah.
That's observing. Huh? The malachas, most of it is observing, right?
One honoring, one remembering.
No. That's not what we just said. That's not what we just said. Those are the biblical commands, is remember and observe. Now we're going into the rabbinic. What is meant by honor? This refers to our sage's statement that is a mitzvah for a person to wash his face, his hands, and his feet in hot water on Friday in honor of Shabbos. Take a shower before Shabbos comes in. He should wrap himself in tzitzis and sit with proper respect, waiting to receive Shabbos as one goes out to greet the king. Now, come to shul to greet the king. Exactly. The sages of former generations would gather their students together on Friday, wrap themselves in fine robes, and say, "Come, let us go out and greet the Shabbos king." Right? That's when we sing Lecha Doidi. Right? So it kind of exemplifies that. Among the ways of honoring the Shabbos is wearing a clean garment. On Shabbos, garments should not resemble one's weekdays clothes. A person who does not have different garments for Shabbos should allow his robe to hang low, so that on Shabbos clothing will not resemble the clothes that he wears during the week. You know, back in the day, they only had one set of clothing.
Yeah.
So that set of clothing, let it hang lower on Shabbos if you, I guess the hemmed it or whatever, right? Ezra ordained that the people launder their clothes on Thursday as an expression of honor of Shabbos, not on Friday, right? Just to give you enough time to make sure that it becomes clean and dried out and whatever is necessary. Also, every Shabbos, you got other things to prepare food for Shabbos and so on, right? In respect for Shabbos, it is forbidden to plan a meal or a wine fest for Friday, right? According to the letter of the law, one may eat and drink until nightfall. Nevertheless, as an expression of honor for Shabbos, a person should refrain from planning a meal from mid-afternoon onwards so that it will enter into Shabbos with an appetite. should come to Shabbos hungry, should not come to Shabbos full. Okay? The person should prepare his table on Friday, even if he is to partake only of a small amount of food equivalent to the size of an olive. So also part of honoring Shabbos, make your table. Don't make the table on Shabbos. Could you make it on Shabbos? Yes, but that's not honoring Shabbos. Make it before Shabbos. So every person should prepare his table on Saturday night, even if he's to partake only of an amount of food equal to the size of an olive. In this manner, he shows respect to Shabbos when it enters and when it departs. Right? When it departs Saturday night, we're talking about Malava Malka, right? So Malava Malka, even though it's not part of Malava, means to escort the queen. Shabbos is the queen. You're escorting it, right? Coming in by setting up the table, going out by also having a meal and celebrating, right? So one should prepare one's house while it is still day as an expression of respect for Shabbos. There should be a lamp burning, a table prepared with food to eat, and a couch beckoned with spreads. All of these are expressions of honor of Shabbos. Even a very important person who is unaccustomed to buying items at the marketplace or doing housework is required to perform tasks to prepare by himself for Shabbos. This is an expression of his own personal honor, right? That he's doing something for Shabbos. The sages of the former generations involved themselves in such activities. There was one who would chop wood to cook with, one who would salt meat, one who would braid wigs, one who would kindle the lamps, others would go out and purchase food and beverages for the Shabbos, even though this was not their ordinary practice. The more one involves himself in such activities, the more praiseworthy it is. What is meant by Shabbos delight? So that was honor of Shabbos. Got it? Now delight. Is delight a biblical or a rabbinic command?
It's
Rabbinical command, right? Hainug Shabbos, it's called. Oineg Shabbos, right? Means delighting pleasure. This refers to our sage's statement that a person must prepare a particularly sumptuous dish and pleasantly flavored beverage for the Shabbos. All of this must be done within the context of the person's financial status. The more one spends both financially in expenses undertaken for Shabbos and an effort in preparation of many good foods, the more praiseworthy. How is the Kiddush Shabbos? It's good. Huh? Hello? Earth to heaven. Are you in heaven or are you down here?
on the book.
You're in the book. Oh, so you're heavenly. I'm asking you, how was the Kiddush Shabbos? Was the food good?
Especially good.
Oh, especially
Yeah,
good.
it was. We were talking about that after, and it was especially good. For the York site or for,
For everybody.
it was good. The egg rolls were okay.
How'd the egg rolls?
Yeah, it was good, very good. Food tasted very good. Not normal.
Hello? How was the food? Was it
It
delightful?
was, yeah. I especially love the smoke.
Smoked meat?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's smoked meat.
Was it the salmon?
Salmon spread?
The salmon spread?
Salmon spread?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Good to know.
And the egg rolls were nice as well.
Yeah. Not the egg was especially good.
Different caterer?
No, I mean, I just got some new things.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
But otherwise,
Yeah, good one.
okay, great. So, sorry for that, folks.
She said very concerning yesterday.
Just want to make sure, that we're fulfilling the mitzvahs over here. So, in preparation for the good foods, the more praiseworthy it is. If, however, this is not with one's financial capacity, even if one merely stews food or the like in honor of the Shabbos, is considered Shabbos delight. One is not obligated to strain oneself or to borrow from others in order to prepare more food for Shabbos. Sages of the former generation said, make your Shabbos as weekdays, but do not depend on others, right? Others, don't go borrow money so you can have more elaborate food for Shabbos. A person who is indulgent and wealthy and conducts all his days as Shabbos must also partake of different foods on Shabbos from those which he partakes during the week. right? So a wealthy person still has to make his Shabbos different. If his fare cannot be changed, he should at least change the time in which he eats his meal. For example, if he usually eats early, he should eat later. If he usually eats late, he should eat earlier. In other words, do something different about Shabbos. Don't make it the same. A person is obligated to eat 3 meals on Shabbos, one in the evening, one in the morning. Morning doesn't mean the morning, means after, after davening, like as we do, and one in the afternoon. That's Shalosh Shudas, right? Chabad custom is that we just have some fruits or something like that, or have some. We don't wash for that meal. Others do though. One should be extremely careful regarding these 3 meals, not to eat any less. Even a poor man who derives his livelihood from charity should eat 3 meals on Shabbos. Nevertheless, a person who is sick from overeating or one who fasts constantly is not obligated to partake of 3 meals. All these meals, 3 meals, must be significant sittings at which wine is served at each. One must break bread on 2 loaves, right? Lechem Mishnah. And the same applies regarding the holidays. It's not just Shabbos.
Yeah, smoked meat was good. Tender.
Okay, eating meat and drinking wine on Shabbos is a form of pleasure for a person, provided this is within his financial capacity. On Shabbos and holidays, a significant meal at which wine will be served is forbidden to be scheduled for the time the house of study is in session. Right? Instead, the practice of the righteous of the former generations would be as follows. A person would recite the morning service, additional prayers in synagogues. Afterwards, he would return home and partake of a second Shabbos meal. He would then proceed to the house of study to read from the written law and to study the oral law until the afternoon, at which time he would recite the afternoon service. He would then partake of the third Shabbos meal, a significant sitting in which wine is served, and continue eating and drinking until Shabbos passed.
That's before Havdalah?
That's before the evening service and Havdalah, yes. Yeah. It is forbidden for a person to travel more than 3 parsecs, which is about 3 miles, or 3 kilometers, maybe 3 kilometers.
Wow.
From the beginning of the day on Friday, this restriction was adopted so that one will arrive home early in the day to prepare one's Shabbos meals. One may not rely on the members of the household to prepare for him, for they do not know that one will arrive on this day. Right? I know you're coming from out of town, surprise visit, I guess. Right? Now, if you picked up the phone, the Rambam would have said it, pick up the phone and let people know. So then, Okay. Needless to say, this restriction applies when one is visiting others, since by arriving unexpectedly, one will embarrass them, for they will not have made the preparations appropriate for hosting guests. Don't want to do that. It's forbidden to fast, to cry out to God, to offer supplication, or to entreat his mercy on Shabbos, even when the community is beset by a distressing circumstance that would ordinarily require the community to fast and sound trumpets. We do not fast or sound trumpets on Shabbos or holidays. There are, however, exceptions. They include a city surrounded by non-Jews, or a flooding river, and a ship sinking at sea. We may sound the trumpets on Shabbos to summon help for them, offer supplications on their behalf, and ask for mercy from them. We do not lay siege on non-Jewish cities less than 3 days before the Shabbos, so that the minds of the warriors will be settled and they will be not agitated and preoccupied on Shabbos. Right? So you don't want to start close to Shabbos because, no one wants to fight on Shabbos. Sometimes you have to. Right? Yeah. Usually the IDF has to fight on Shabbos. You don't start the war that way, so that way maybe you might be able to finish. For this reason, we may not set sail on a ship less than 3 days before Shabbos, so that one's mind will be settled before Shabbos and will not suffer excessive discomfort. Right? If you're going to only start traveling right before Shabbos, so you're going to have distress of, where you're going to be over Shabbos. For the sake of the mitzvah, however, one may set on a sea journey even on Friday, if you're going for a mitzvah. One should enter into an agreement with the ship interrupted its journey on Shabbos. However, if this agreement is not kept, there's no consequence. From Tyre to Sidon and the like, one may sit out on Friday, even if the journey concerns one's personal affairs, because it's close by. In places where it's customary not to set out on journey on Friday at all, one should refrain from traveling. Sexual.
Question: if one goes on a cruise, a kosher cruise, which lasts for over a week, and it occurs in the Shabbat, what are the regulations in terms of of you and, well, I guess the ship moving?
Right. Yeah. So, the issue is that, if they're doing it for your sake or they're doing it not for your sake. So if they're doing, we learned that earlier, you can't have a non-Jew do a prohibition for you on Shabbos, a biblical prohibition for you on Shabbos for your sake. If they're doing it for their sake, then you could benefit from it, right?
But I'm referring to a kosher cruise where everything.
So that's the parameter,
Okay.
right? That's the parameter of the law, right?
Okay.
So if they're doing it for their own sake, in order to travel, right, from point A to point B, so then you can benefit from that, right? So that's where the gray area might be. They have to do it for their own benefit, right? Which on some level they're doing it for their benefit because they're traveling themselves. They want to get to this place, irrespective of you. I mean, in the end, they're doing it because of you, but they themselves want to get to that place. Right. It's actually it's a good question. So if you're on a ship, if you're on a kosher cruise that has 3,000 people, and the kosher element of it is 500 people, so then they're doing it for the non-Jews. So then you can benefit. But if it's a ship of 300 and they're all Jewish, even then, I think it's okay because they want to get from point A to point B. But I have to look into that more. Okay, sexual relations are considered a dimension of a Shabbos pleasure. Therefore, Torah scholars who are healthy set aside Friday night as the night when they fulfill their conjugal duties.
Duties.
Huh?
Duties.
It's a duty. Some people consider it what's the word I'm looking for? Anyways, whatever.
The law?
No, they consider it their right. No, it's their duty.
Something that should be fulfilled, that should be done.
Yeah. At the outset, it is permitted to engage in sexual relations with a virgin on Shabbos. It is not forbidden because one creating a wound or because of the pain one feels. The observance of Shabbos and the prohibitions against worshiping the false deities are each equivalent to the observance of all the mitzvahs of the Torah. And Shabbos is an eternal sign between the Holy One, blessed be He, and us. For this reason, whoever transgresses the other mitzvahs is considered to be one of the wicked of Israel. But a person who desecrates Shabbos publicly is considered as an idolater. Even worse, in other words. Both of them are considered to be the equivalent to non-Jews in all regards. In others, halachically, not in spirit, not in soul. Therefore, our prophets praise Shabbos observance, saying, happy is the man who does the following. and the mortal who holds fast to it, who keeps the Shabbos without desecrating it. It is explicitly stated in our prophetic tradition that whoever observes the Shabbos according to the laws and honors it, and delights in it according to his ability will receive reward in this world, in addition to the reward that's preserved from the world to come, as it says in Isaiah. You will then delight in God. I will cause you to ride on high places of the earth, and I will nourish you. The heritage of Jacob, your ancestors, thus the mouth of God has spoken. Blessed be God who grants assistance. We finished the laws of Shabbos. Mazel tov.
So when it says someone who violates the Shabbat is considered to be a Gentile.
Publicly. If he does it privately in his house, not.
Okay.
And others halachically. So you can't have mavushal wine, for example, right? You'd have to have for such a person. Non-mavushal becomes a problem with that person. Because it's like an equivalent as an idolater. Okay? That's what it means. It doesn't mean that they're not Jewish. It means in halachic ramifications of halacha, you treat them in that way. So the best example is wine.
Okay.
Right?
Now, if at that point the person does tshuva,
no,
doesn't matter.
No, then he's not in that classification anymore.
Correct.
What did you say, I'm sorry? What would you ask?
If he does tshuva, after tshuva, at that point, so he no longer publicly violates the Shabbat. Right. So
yeah. Okay, let's do halacha here in chapter 1 of Eruvin, laws of Eruvin, that contain a positive commandment of rabbinic origin. It's not including the reckoning of the 630 mitzvahs. This mitzvah is explained in the chapters that follow. Sorry? Chapter 1. The next chapter. Just want to start with Eruvin. According to the Torah law, when there are several neighbors dwelling in a courtyard, each in his private home, they are all permitted to carry within the entire courtyard. Why? From homes to the courtyard and from the courtyard to the homes, because the entire courtyard is a private domain. It's not public domain, right? Right? It's permitted to carry within it in its entirety. Similarly, regarding the lane that has a pole positioned in its entrance or a beam positioned above it, all the inhabitants of the lane are permitted to carry in the entire lane, right? And the courtyards to the lane, and from the lane to the courtyards, for the entire lane is a private domain, right? Even though there's many people, it's not private in the sense that it's private only to me, because that lane is also open to you. We all have access because we have homes on that lane. So we all have access to that, right? Yet it's still considered a private domain, right? So from a courtyard to, if there are many people, the back in the day, that's how people lived. And you have some on Kent Avenue, you have homes and you have a courtyard in the middle.
Yeah.
Most homes are facing to the street. But there you have on both on the right side and left side, you have on Kent Avenue, right next to Yeshiva, you have a bunch, four homes that are facing each other. They have sort of like a courtyard, right, which is unusual, but that's what, back in the day, that's how people lived.
I'm curious about that.
So that's what we're talking about over here. Since it's all private domain, right? So biblically, you could carry from the house to the courtyard, even though several of us have homes to the courtyard, but it's all private, right? Likewise, if there's a lane in the back that many homes are connected to, right? And it's going to the public domain, that's going to the public domain, but you have the lechi there. So you have that signpost, right? So therefore it makes it permissible, you can carry there. It's all biblical. Okay.
So you're saying the example with Kent, by default, it is private domain. There's no need for.
I mean, today, just to set the record very clear and straight, we really don't have too many public domains. The Cary highway might be, because the amount of cars that go through there. right? You need that hundreds of thousands of cars go through there on a daily basis, right? That's a biblical public domain. That's why when we learned these laws earlier, I said, don't today, your street, right, is not called a public domain. It's called the Carmelis. That's a rabbinic thing, right? Because you don't have hundreds of thousands of people going through your street or, throughout the day. So then biblically, it would be your street would be a private domain. Rabbinically, it's a Carmelis. It's a in-between stage, right? That the rabbis did it because they were afraid that if in those streets that feel public, but in fact are not public, you will act in it like a private domain. Then when you do come to the public thoroughfare, you won't be mindful. So they made that distinction, but that's all rabbinic law, right?
On Ramadan,
Huh?
on Ramadan, I noticed there's some sticks with some cord.
And David Cohen's home, right?
That's two homes.
That's bad. That's crazy. Yeah, that's what we're talking about over here, an Eruv. Yeah, that's an Eruv. Chatzerus, yeah. Yeah. Well, because they're two private homes. So that's what we're going over here. Two private homes, biblically, you could carry, not rabbinically. That's what we're going to say here. Okay?
Okay.
Similarly, all the area within a city, finishing number 1, that is surrounded by a wall and that is 10 handbreadths high, about 40 inches, and has gates that are locked at night is a private domain. This is the law of the Torah, right? That's biblical law. Nevertheless, according to rabbinic decree, it's forbidden for neighbors to carry from a private domain that is divided into different dwellings unless the inhabitants join together in an Eruv before the commencement of Shabbos. You need an Eruv. Eruv means to mix together. Because really, you're two private domains. Biblically, that's okay. But the rabbis came and said, no. Rabbinically, you need to make an Eruv. The restrictions apply to courtyards, lanes, and cities. It was instituted by King Solomon and his court. That's a few years ago. Similarly, people who dwell in tents and booths or in an encampment that is surrounded by a partition may not carry from tent to tent until they make an Eruv. In contrast, members of a caravan who surround their encampment with a partition are not required to join an Eruv. They may transfer articles from tent to tent without the Eruv, for the very nature of the circumstances considered as to be an Eruv, since they are not long-lasting dwellings. Why did King Solomon institute this restriction? So that common people would not err and say, just as permitted to transfer articles from the courtyard to the streets of the city and its marketplace and bring articles in their domains to the courtyard, it is permitted to take articles from the city to the fields and from the fields to the city, where there will be a biblical, Moreover, they would operate under the mistaken impression that the marketplace and streets, since they are public domains, are like fields in the desert. This would lead them to further error, causing them to say that not only the courtyard is a private domain, but they would think that there is no prohibition against transfer of articles, and that it is permitted to transfer articles from the private domain to the public domain, from the public domain to the private domain. Therefore, King Solomon instituted the following rules. Whenever a private domain is divided into separate dwellings, units that are considered the private property of individuals, right? And an area remains that is the joint property of all individuals. They're all shared equally. That's a courtyard, right? A courtyard leading into many homes leading into one courtyard. They all share that courtyard, right? They all have part ownership of that courtyard, right? equal to the courtyard onto an open, that open into it. The area that is jointly owned is considered a public domain, rabbinically. Similarly, every place that one of the neighbors owns has his private domain and treats it as his individual holding shall be considered as private domain. It is thus forbidden to transfer an article from the person's private property to the area that own jointly. Just it is forbidden to transfer from the private domain into the public domain. Instead, every person should contain his activities of his own property unless an eruv is established. Although, according to the Torah, the area is one private domain. Like we have an eruv in Montreal, right, that allows people to. Okay, let's just do the last one over here. What is meant by an eruv? That all individuals will join together in one collection of food before the commencement of Shabbos. It serves as a declaration that they have joined together and share food as one. None of them has totally private property. Instead, they have jointly owned area is property to all. So too, everyone shares in the property that is privately owned. They are all joined in one domain. So since we take food and food makes us, sort of like equalizes us, right? That we take food from each other, right? Or at least food is brought. Therefore, it makes it like I can go to your home, you can come to my home. And therefore you can carry in from one home to the other. Performing this act will prevent them from erring and thinking that they're permitted to transfer articles between the private domain and public domain. So in other words, since you did an act to create by our private homes, that it's like one private home, that in a sense, but by doing that, that's going to remind us that we shouldn't err, that we should in fact take from a private domain into the public domain. That's biblical. With that, we're going to stop here. Thank you, folks.
Thank you,
Rabbi.
See you
Have a
6:30,
good day, everyone.
8 o'clock.